The June 30th, 2022 meeting of the Monroe County Legislative District Revision Commission will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Colby.
Here.
Mr. Colby is present. Chairwoman Lamont.
The June 30th, 2022 meeting of the Monroe County Legislative District Revision Commission will now come to.
Legislator Lamont is present. Ms. Nicolay.
Here.
Ms. Nicolay is present. Mr. Ortiz.
Here.
Mr. Ortiz is present. Ms. Roman.
Here.
Roman is present.
Will everyone please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we turn to the next item on the agenda, I would just like to thank all of the commission members for their service and the participating members of the public for their input through this process. We will now proceed to the public comment forum. Mr. Clerk.
As a reminder, if you submitted a written comment, we provided to everybody, including Legislator Roman. You should have received them in your email. There are 2 registered speakers to address the commission. With Michael Slade come up first. You have 3 minutes to speak. The timer, can you grab the timer? Whenever you get a timer, you just kindly conclude your remarks.
Good afternoon. One of the things I want to mention is the lack of compactness. I've done a study of compactness. I've used the same compactness algorithm that was used for the state congressional and state Senate special master. It's called Polsby, POLSBY -Popper algorithm. And there are many, many districts which are not very well compacted. It's sad to note that there are at least 6 that are less compacted in the proposal than they were previously. And some of the very poor compactedness are exactly what you'd expect. But my remarks here today are touching on a different subject. I am not a lawyer. My only grasp of English means that I am doing reasonably well in Wordle. But here, the way I read what's in front of you, you did not submit within 90 days a recommendation. Therefore, by default, you think that there is no need for any changes in the district name. And therefore, since 90 days are up, the commission is out of business. And if you read through the rest of C2, 12, C4, 5, and 6, et cetera, you realize that there is no way forward. The legislature can't vote because you haven't given them a recommendation. There can't be a referendum because there's been no law, et cetera, et cetera. And the only path forward is through a special master done by the courts. You're going to have to come up with some reason why you didn't have any time within the 90 days. And if you try and appeal to the 150 days before the next general election, this legislature had the time to correct it between 2011 and today, when the petitioning dates and primary were changed. If you use 150 days before the next general election in 2023, and you do it just before the deadline of 150 days, then it will be after petitioning. You just have no way forward, and you need to figure out what's going to happen. And I don't believe this commission is the proper body to move forward. Thank you.
Next speaker is Terrence Schmidt.
I'll be a little bit redundant with Mr. Slade. When this commission began, there was an appearance that you had a genuine commitment to transparency and responsibly doing your job. That clearly was not the case, was a mirage, given that as a matter of law, you were required by the county charter to submit a plan to the legislature 3 weeks ago, and you're clearly not even ready to do that today. And a transparent commission would have offered an explanation of a compelling reason for not meeting that legal deadline well in advance of the deadline, not 3 weeks after, if we're going to hear a compelling reason today. And also, just to reiterate what I said in the past, what Mr. Slater said in the past, when you do finally present a plan to the legislature, if courts allow you to, please respect municipal home rule law and prioritize compact districts as prescribed by the law and not a bipartisan incumbent protection plan that is specifically proscribed by the law, but which is what you presented to us in May. Thank you and have a good afternoon.
Anybody that would like to speak that didn't sign up?
You knew I would. I'm Dave Gerritsen. I live in Greece. 8 weeks. 8 weeks. Where have you been? What have you been doing? 8 weeks since we last had a public meeting of this body. Come on. As you know, I've been at every single one of your meetings. I spoke, if not at everyone, most of them. I was optimistic at first, and I shared my optimism with you. I hope that this body would be sincere, would operate in a transparent way, and I am, you've let me down. I'm disappointed. You held hearings, but transparency was lacking. The meetings were not live streamed as they should have been. The meetings were recorded, but usually without video. Comments that were emailed to you, and you solicited emailed comments, were hidden from the public. To this day, the public does not know how many comments, who commented, what they had to say to you. You're sitting on that. Why isn't that public? This is not a transparent process. And now it appears from your agenda that a revision seems likely. That's probably a good thing. I hope you do a good job. In the 6 hearings that you had, the listening sessions, a lot of public comments were offered, especially about LDs 23, 24, and 25. And I hope you will consider what those people from the public came to tell you. You'll remember that I offered my own multi-part presentation in 3-minute episodes about the gerrymandering in my own neighborhood in Greece, where in 2011, my neighborhood was divided among 4 legislative districts. Across the street from me, that district runs from my neighborhood in Greece out to Parma. A few blocks from me, that district runs all the way out to Spencerport and into the town of Sweden. And another few blocks away, it runs down to Gates. That's gerrymandering. I hope that my neighborhood in Greece is also one of the things you'll be considering correcting. It was gerrymandering then, it's gerrymandering again. As previous speakers pointed out, I think it would be a good idea, an excellent idea for you folks to be very careful about providing a map that reflects what the public wants to see beyond your own partisan interests. A veto is still possible, a referendum is still possible, and thanks to your own delay, judicial intervention is now possible. If you provide a map that the public approves of and not just 20 or 25 or 29 legislators, if you provide a map that the public is mostly okay with, you can avoid that, and I hope you will. Do a good job, please. Do a good job, not just for yourselves, but for the public and your voters. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak?
Well, this concludes the, oh, I'm sorry.
Can you state your name, please?
Bruce Mellon from the city. Looking forward, I'd like to reinforce keeping city neighborhoods together and not mixed with areas outside the city. I also look forward to seeing or being able to obtain, receiving or being able to obtain the next draft shape files so we can take a look at them and see how good they might be, and hopefully we can avoid a messy conclusion to this redistricting process. Thank you.
Anybody else?
So now this concludes the public forum. As you are all aware, we held 6 public input sessions across Monroe County and the city of Rochester, where we heard from dozens of citizens about suggested improvements for the maps, as well as received written email comments and webpage comments. Over the last weeks, as chairwoman of this commission, I have taken the time to compile all of the comments we received, not only this year, but also from last year, and distilled the most common, make districts more compact to the best of our ability, further maintain communities of interest, avoid crossing boundaries such as rivers, do not protect or target any legislator, keep separate but similar communities within the same district, and a debate over the proper number of city legislative districts. In compiling this, I have worked with the legislative staff with the assistance of the Board of Election staff to update the initial draft map to meet these publicly requested changes while adhering to the law. To provide a few specific examples of how this meets the public input I just mentioned, I will go through some of the most noticeable improvements from both our current maps and the initial draft maps presented by our vendor. Districts becomes more compact and contiguous, particularly districts 20 and 14 and increase. It also brings communities of interest and like communities further together, such as the South Wedge, suburban and urban villages, and it maintains majority-minority districts in the city. It also fixes areas where neighborhood associations and communities of interest cross the river. For example, in the previous map, Edgerton and Maplewood were split across the river to Clinton and on the east side. Plex and the South Wedge were split with one another crossing the river. This map fixes both of those issues and crosses the river as little as practical. While we heard from both sides of whether the city of Rochester requires 8 or 9 city districts, this map maintains the current 9 city districts while adhering to population requirements. It does not target or protect any incumbents, including 2 open districts. It does not split villages and only splits towns when necessary to meet population requirements in accordance with the law. And while this is not an expert tool, when analyzed by the widely utilized DAYS redistricting program, it scores roughly 60% in every metric. Compactness, minority representation, proportionality, and even a complete 100% on splitting. And scores a full approval rating based on all qualifications. While no map can be perfect, I believe that this map attempts to meet as much public input as possible while adhering to the law, and is a necessary step towards moving this commission's work forward on achieving a final map acceptable to the public, this commission, and eventually the legislature and county executive. Therefore, I would now like to hold a roll call vote to direct our retained vendor, ArcBridge Training and Consulting, Inc., to produce the presented map before you, which includes community-based changes from the initial draft map. This will allow for wide public consumption of the map as seen with the initial draft map at monroecounty.redistricting.com, including specific demographic information, overlaid maps, voter address lookup, etc., allowing for further public understanding and input on the updates. In addition, the vendor will further ensure this map compiles with all the legal requirements, although I'm fully confident it does. I would just like to remind everyone that this is directing the vendor to produce the map. We are not voting to adopt the map, and if the motion carries, the public and commission will have time to meet again and discuss following vendor completion of the map. With that being said, we will need a move and a second, and then we will open the floor for discussion.
President Lamar, I make a motion that we take this map that you and your staff have diligently prepared for us and have the vendor prepare a final document for us to review and in the near future.
Is there a second?
I'm sorry, I have questions, and I just,
We make the motion, then we do it before we vote.
sure. Second.
Okay, no.
Thank you.
The floor is now open for discussion.
All right, well, so I guess I get some clarification, I guess, at first, because you mentioned that with your staff and with the Board of Elections, this is the first time that I've ever seen this, and the first time that I recall having a conversation about a consensus list of the community input that you referenced in there. I do agree with compactness as a very important piece of what we needed to review. But with this being the very first time seeing this and having had the opportunity or not had the opportunity to review the list of attributes or pieces of input there, I'd like to be able to have the opportunity to do that as part of the Board of Elections, because I have not had that opportunity thus far. And the other thing is here, in terms of the demographic information, if we already have that, I'd like that to be produced as well. And I guess my second question is, if we're proposing this to the vendor, are you asking them to replicate this 100%? Or are you asking them to review this as part of their next draft?
I'll start with your last question.
Okay.
So yes, we're telling them to draw the map in accordance with the law based on the requirements. So yes, we're telling them to draw the map just like that,
Just like this?
just like that, in accordance to the law. If
Okay.
there is an issue, if it's not meeting a legal requirement, then we're asking them to make an adjustment.
Okay, okay. Again, I'd like the opportunity, because you referenced the Board of Elections, and this half of the Board of Elections was not part of these conversations in terms of developing what this looked like. So I'd like the opportunity to actually be able to review this and the list that you referenced in terms of, I guess, an agreement, if you will, of what the top things were that the community had asked for.
Well, I sort of disagree, because we've had a number of meetings, a number of input sessions. This map is based on that.
But you have a consensus listing there of things that were not discussed amongst this entire commission.
I would argue that they're not inconsistent. I think there's the president's compilation of what she received from the public.
And it's the information that we all receive from the public.
Right,
We
all
did,
received the
But
comments.
they're cherry picked in terms of the numbers of the which ones we chose, and we did not have a discussion of which ones, because there are probably many other comments per se that were listed and said during the comment period that perhaps didn't make that list, that I think would have at least been important to have the discussion about which ones make the list.
Well, I disagree with that. I believe that this map represents comments from the public almost to date.
But you have not given us the opportunity as the commission to be able to review that. You're stating that, and some of those things I for sure absolutely heard, but there are many other things that were stated that are not per se on there. And again, being the very first time that I'm hearing this listing, this map, all I'm saying is that it would have been nice to actually meet as a commission to talk about these inputs and agree on what the consensus list would have looked like, which was not done.
The consensus list she reads.
It-
Go ahead. if you
Yes,
like.
sorry, I was allowing
Go ahead.
Jackie to have the floor for a minute. Yeah, I agree completely, right? So this is not a consensus list. This is a list based on, from what I've just understood, of the President Lamar and staff and someone at the Board of Elections, it sounds like, because it's not Jackie, have compiled a list based on what they heard. And I'm also now hearing that some feedback from last year, which sounds like didn't show up this year, that to dig up some feedback, is now added to this particular list. And I don't know what that feedback is, because I haven't been provided with the opportunity to actually look at this map. The other things that were said sound like what the community had vocalized. I can't tell you that for a fact. I don't know, Colby, have you been able to distill this map? Have you been able to go down and kind of street level, see what's going on or happening, occurring? Just at glance, I see some just oddities.
This final draft, I've been asked questions of what should happen or not happen. In this final draft I've seen in the last couple of days. But it's a lot better than what we had. It's a lot better than what the vendors shown. And it might not be the final version, but I think it's going to be pretty close. And I think we need to present something to the vendor to get a map back that we know is legally workable and to move this process forward. And this is I think sending this map to the vendor is the proper way to move this forward. And then when the vendor comes back with his legal review of this map, then if there's need for more discussion, that would be the appropriate time to have more discussions on this map.
I'm sorry, I guess I didn't hear that this was going to be a consideration for our vendor. What I heard was that we want the map to be replicated. And if there are legal issues, for then it to be changed.
Before it comes back to us for consideration.
Correct. So this map is being drawn by, and has been drawn
I don't
by
want,
only a part of this commission.
I don't want you to think that you won't have an opportunity to say something else about this. We're just submitting this to the vendor to draw, not as the final map, but for consideration. So you still have time for input or to even consider changes. This isn't the final. This is just what we're submitting to the vendor to draw.
So what exactly are you submitting to the vendor so that I understand? Is it a list of recommendations? Is it that map and then they input it into the system?
All been emailed to you.
Yeah, a PDF was emailed to me. Right, and I think everyone else has a hard copy. So, I mean, that, with all due respect, it is.
That's the need for the vendor to put the map together, right?
No. I mean, I don't think a vendor needs more than that, right? In order to see the demographics, you just said the demographics are complete. You said the population is complete. I mean, maybe all they need is the PDF.
Type of information we provided to the vendor in the initial draft that they sent to us. We're providing them with the same information with some recommended changes.
So that's, I don't know if that's entirely accurate. We provided them a list of recommendations that we suggested based on the original maps for them to make those suggested changes to.
And they didn't follow any of
They
them.
didn't do it.
Well,
They didn't follow any of them.
they chose very few of them. I would agree with you there. They chose very few, but obviously the very top of the list were the required mandated ones, which they did adhere to. But again, with this, I guess what I take issue with is this is the first time that I'm having the ability to see this and discuss through. So I walked in here today thinking that we would actually come up with, based on what we heard and really tried to digest this, the community input and come up with this consensus list of where is it that we want to ensure the areas that are improved and or modified with this next draft. This looks like it's already been done and we're moving outside of the process of having the vendor make those changes and recommendations for us, given the community input that we heard, that they would then develop what this next draft. There was no point in having a vendor if this is what we were going to do. We might as well have done this from the very start if this is what we were going to do. I guess that's where I am. We paid someone almost $15,000, $20,000 at this point to develop the map outside of the vendor process.
Yaversha, is this the first time you've seen this map?
I couldn't even tell you. That is my problem. that is
First time you've seen this map.
Sabrina, I couldn't tell you. I have a PDF in front of me. I can send you a map that looks very similar to this one, probably. But the problem in this situation lies that I have a PDF in front of me. Everyone at the table has a PDF in front of them, or a printed version, excuse me. And I can't tell you what the boundary lines are for each district. I can't tell you the population. And I'm expected to vote on this, to provide it to ArcBridge so that they can replicate a map that I don't even know is legal.
I would argue.
I don't even know, or I don't even know what kind of feedback was.
All of the people, considerations, and we put them together and we agreed on them and we sent it over. And we didn't know that they were gonna be, whether they were ready to be legal or not. We didn't know. We just gave them the suggestions. It's not really any different other than the fact that it's more detailed.
It's a map.
With you, but what we missed is we didn't have the meeting or the discussion about what those inputs would look like that would be going to this vendor. We did that the first time. We did not, we painstakingly went through it together the first time, but we have not gone through it thereafter.
Is
Well,
there something different
yeah.
that isn't being considered that you
I don't
wanted to
know.
from
I
the
mean,
first
I
list?
think that I would like to be able to see the listing items that you had there.
One of the things
I
on the
do-
list was to make 8 seats in the city. And I'm a supporter of the 8 seats in the city because that's what the
And
population.
I'm not, and I'm not.
And she's not. So, you know,
Right.
there's some give and take. here,
I
some
understand that,
compromise
but
already.
some of the items that I wanted to discuss, and I'm not sure, I do agree that the compactness was a critical issue. I don't know if the 23 and 14 made it on the list, which I believe were consistently discussed as areas of improvement. There are a number of different things that, again, I was under the impression that we would be coming to talk about what this consensus would look like to then direct to the vendor. All I'm saying is that this feels out of process in terms of what my expectation was as part of this commission. That's all.
I think the vendor, if we send a list, it's obviously the vendor doesn't know the community as well as people in this area. And it was obvious to me when they came back with the map, there was neighborhoods he couldn't figure out. They couldn't even judge the river right. So I think sending him or them, I don't know if it's he or she, so sending them a map let them review it for the legality and the different legal requirements we have to meet, and send it back with a detailed map back to us, because this map does not go down to street level as well as people would like. And if we send the map to them and tell them to produce this map in a level that people can look down this address level to see where they are, is a great place for us to start for discussions going forward. Otherwise, we're just gonna sit here making lists all day long and not get anything accomplished. I really think we need to vote on this and decide if we want to move forward or if we just want to committee to death making lists. To me, I'm more of an action guy and like to move things forward and get something that's hard for us to discuss, not just making lists of our wants.
Okay, so
With action, but I also am a big proponent of process. And I feel like we've certainly deviated from process. But that being said, is the intention moving forward that this map now then is presented to the public for another set of hearings? Considering, I mean, what exactly are we doing then? Because I feel like we're not talking about process and then all of a sudden something occurs and we're doing ourselves a disservice having to go this route then.
I can't speak for the whole commission, but I would say when the map come back, it become a public document and the public can review it. We're going to have another meeting as a commission to review it, to see if we want to make changes or just move it on to the full ledge. And at that time, there would be more than adequate time at that meeting for public comment. I do not see us doing 6 more meetings to get more public comment. I do vision that when the map comes back, we would have a public hearing as we do at any other meeting, and then we would have a discussion where we want to go forward with this map or what changes.
But before we vote, and I'm not saying it's time to vote, what exactly is happening here, right? So I heard an overview, but if we're about action, if we're about actually caring about what we vote on, what is happening to this proposed map? I heard a few things, right? An overview, but I think Jackie started off the conversation by saying, we don't know what you are proposing, or I don't know what you are proposing. So can you give a better overview of what your proposal is in that?
I think I said it from the beginning, we're directing the vendor to draw the map.
What are the changes to the proposed Arc Bridge map?
You have them in front of you.
What do you think?
Can you be more detailed?
Not draw a new one and then we discuss it when we have what we are actually looking at in more detail to actually discuss and make comments on, rather than suggestions. This is, I know that we're implying that it's a must do, but it's really a suggestion because we're only voting to have them reflect this map in the system that they are providing for us, so that people can go online and look up and put their address in and, all of that detailed stuff. I think that it's not probably much different than the variety of maps that I've seen passed around and being negotiated on, and I know that some of us are trying to make compromises, but this is just step one, moving towards, a vote on an actual map at some point. And then that's only a recommendation again to the legislature, where those 29 people are the people that are gonna vote, and you can amend things at that point. You're gonna have three chances to vote on it and make changes or not. I think we would be better serviced, like Robert said, to get something that's substantial rather than just talking about ideas and lists.
Thank you, Commissioner Nicolay, for saying that. I understand that, and I think every single time, if we continue with this process, I will be this vocal. I am very interested. Where is the list? What actions are happening in the proposed map?
What list?
So of suggestions, right? So it looks to me at glance, there's something that happens with the proposed Arc Bridge map in what you're drawing in Irondequoit, for example. I'm not sure what the proposal is for what happened in Penfield in comparison to what the proposed Arc Bridge map was.
So two things. First, the original map that we received from Arc Bridge will still be available for comparison to this new map. That's number one. And number two, you received all of the same information and comments from the public that we received.
Mm-hmm.
Saying that you don't have it is not true.
So that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying what part of those comments did you and your staff find to be most important when drawing this revision? What was ranked in order when creating a revised map, a proposed revised map?
Some of the things that we did were, we conformed to the 5% population. The towns of Hamlin, Clarkson, Parma, Ogden, Riga, Wheatland, Rush, and Mendon are whole. Some of them are split in the map from the vendor. All of the villages are whole, none of them are split between the legislative districts. Communities of interest, the best that we could define, are preserved. Legislative District 11 is comprised of 3 east side villages. So we put all 3 villages together in one legislative district, which makes it much more of similar interest, people that live in a village, and there was enough population to do that adequately in 11. Some of the legislators got displaced, not intentionally. I believe that there are 4 that are not in their districts anymore, but I'm not 100% sure on that because we weren't supposed to take that into consideration. There are many neighborhoods in Irondequoit that were kept together. I don't know Irondequoit that well, but some of them are the Longacre neighborhood, Rogers neighborhood, Huntington Hills, Pine Grove, Cooper Road, Durand, Eastman, Somerville, adjacent to Irondequoit Bay. That's why that looks a little funny, is because we considered a water side as a common interest, people along the bay, so it doesn't necessarily look great on paper, but 17 is very much, water on 2 sides. They're the same kinds of things that we've been talking about, where we're trying to keep people of the same interests together. Again, I disagree with the president respectfully. I think there should only be 8 seats in the city. One of the reasons that Penfield looks like it does is because there are 9 seats in the city and there's not enough population for that. So they do ooze out into the suburbs and the towns, which should be favorable to you and your Democratic colleagues. No one's getting outed. But, we have to compromise on all of these things. And again, I would just suggest that you allow this process to work forward, get a look at the detailed map of this from the vendor, and then, we can discuss what other things you think might need to change, or, you can share it with your caucus at that point and see who's in favor of it or who is not, or if they have questions about their particular districts.
And I guess I
And this
will,
is not an easy task. I'll just say that, very difficult.
and I guess I will reiterate for the record, again, first time I am hearing of the list. I mean, you just read off a ton of things. I'm not saying that some of those things were not said in the community input. I'm sure they very much were, but there's clear list that was put together here in terms of the priorities of which ones to be able then to create this map. And we keep saying we, but there was no we in terms of us coming up with what that prioritized list looked like then to develop this. All I'm saying is that we have not put this together. We have not created this map. And as a matter of process and having a consensus on what those inputs should look like, we did not do that. And so for me,
So would you and your fellow legislator have your own list and your own map prepared to share with the
No.
vendor?
because I do not think that that is what we were tasked with here and having several different iterations of this map. What I believe we were tasked with was to be able to come up with a consensus list of what those priorities should look like to then direct the vendor to produce. It was already done with no other input from the rest of the commission members. So as a matter of I have never seen that list. I've never discussed it. and-
Kathy, those are the list, I didn't pull it out of the air. Those
I
are
didn't
things-
say you pulled it out of
Those
the
are
air.
things
What
that
I'm
people have
saying
said
is
to us
that we
as
did
we've
not
been doing
talk
this for
about
how many
this
months.
list in terms of what was going to be put into the next version of the map. We did not do that,
Can we
is
go
what
to a
I'm
roll
saying.
call vote?
You as chairman can do
Yes,
this.
go ahead. Sure. Mr. Colby,
Yes,
Did someone call the question
yes, we did.
Yes.
by calling a roll call vote?
Yes.
Ms. Ortiz.
Oh.
Ms. Roman,
No.
Chairwoman Lamar.
Yes.
2.
Thank you to the public, both this year and last year, for your recommendations, and all the commission members for their recommendations, and I look forward to seeing the vendor's initial draft for our review. I would like to again thank all those who participated in this year's commission so far, including the public and all of our commission members. There being no further business to come before the commission, we will stand adjourned.
Next week?
The next scheduled meeting of the Legislative District Revision Commission will be announced following our vendor completion of today's directed map. In the meantime, today's adopted changes will be available in PDF format on the clerk of the legislative page, including the minutes for today's meetings. The rest-
Point of order. Those are not adopted changes. I'm not sure who's in the audience, probably hearing the same thing I'm hearing, but
We just took a vote. What do you mean it's not adopted?
it's a recommendation to Arkbridge. This is what I'm saying, like there is, all right. Before we wrap up, can I please ask for, I want all communication with Arkbridge as a commission member.
Oh,
Sure, that's fine.
Okay. From the vendor.
Sure, that's fine. We have the same, I don't have any other.
okay, if you'd like to register to speak, please, call 585-753-1950. Although it's not required. Also, please submit your comments to redistricting@monroecounty.gov. And a copy of your comments will be provided to each member of the commission. In addition, members of the public can post publicly on monroecounty.redistricting.com, where all draft maps are also posted, including detailed demographic information.